I'll take a minute to introduce myself. I am Ralph Peeler. I'm a retired family physician from here in Atlanta. I've been a member of the Rotary Club of North Atlanta for 35 years or so. And I bring you greetings from Atlanta, the home of the world's busiest airport. It's said that it doesn't matter whether you're going to heaven or hell, you will have to change planes in Atlanta. So Atlanta is a big, busy city, and we have many Rotary clubs. Mine is rather small, but we like to think that we punch above our weight. So for most of my time in Rotary, I attended a lunch meeting every week and did some local projects with other folks, but was never involved in an international project before, an international global grant. And so about 4 years ago, Godfrey Oakley, whose name you see on the screen, came to speak to our club, and he actually came twice over a couple of years to explain about the concept of prevention of spina bifida and other neural tube defects with folic acid. Dr. Oakley worked at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control for many years. He was the director of the Birth Defects Division of CDC. He retired from CDC and went on to work at the Emory Rollins School of Public Health as a professor there, and has just recently retired from that. So he's in his mid-80s. He's still somewhat active, and he's a great inspiration. So I'm going to give folks a little bit of an overview of Rotary's involvement with spina bifida. This was last year's Rotary International President Jennifer Jones in Colombia visiting the Por Amor Foundation that was started by a past district governor in Colombia to provide assistance to folks with spina bifida. So spina bifida is on the radar of Rotary International, and we're working to try to raise the profile. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of science background about folic acid. Folic acid was first came to the attention of scientists by a woman, Lucy Wills, who was one of the first medical school graduates in Great Britain back in the 1920s. And she couldn't get a job as a physician in Great Britain as a woman at that time. So what'd she do? She packed up and went off to India, where she figured out that anemia in pregnancy was caused by a dietary deficiency, which was later named the Wills factor. And she, more importantly, figured out how to fix it by adding brewer's yeast. Leftover yeast from the brewing of beer is very rich, as it turns out, in vitamins, including folic acid. And so by giving the pregnant women the brewer's yeast, she could correct that anemia. So brewer's yeast is still sold in Great Britain in the form of a spread for toast and crackers called Marmite. I'm told it tastes about as good as you'd think it would. So anyway, I'll leave that. Folate or folic acid is found in many foods, and here's a list of things you can get naturally occurring vitamin B9 or folate from. But fast forward to the 1940s when it was first purified as a vitamin from 4 tons of spinach. So the purification was not easy. What they found was that they could only purify it from fresh spinach and not canned spinach. And this turns out to be a key finding because the naturally occurring vitamin, folate, is not heat stable, and it's also water soluble. So when you cook your green vegetables, basically you destroy the natural vitamin that's in it. So canned spinach, for example, had almost no vitamin in it because it was cooked and washed out. So folic acid is the synthetic form, and it has a couple of advantages. It's heat stable, first of all, so you can cook with it, and it's also better absorbed when you take it. So it's available in prenatal vitamins. It's available separately as a vitamin or in multiple vitamins. You can get it as a supplement. Here's just a little bit of biochemistry just to demonstrate that the science of this is very well worked out. Everybody in the world has to have folic acid or folate in their systems to live. But it turns out that it's particularly critical at a very early stage of embryo formation. So spina bifida and anencephaly, which are related neural tube disorders, are very old in human history. This is an example of a mummy from Egypt that demonstrated spina bifida. So what are neural tube defects? Many people are not familiar with what they are. It's a failure of the closure of the neural tube, which occurs 28 days after conception. And when the brain and spinal cord don't form properly at that critical moment, you get these serious birth defects. And so you can get a gap in the spine where the spinal nerves can protrude underneath the skin in a newborn. You can get hydrocephalus, which is a buildup of fluid in the brain. That causes brain damage, obviously. And so these things can be surgically treated, but they can't be cured. So there's a lifetime of disability often from spina bifida. You get a paralysis of muscles below the level of the defect. You can get loss of sensation, loss of bowel and bladder control, learning and developmental issues, orthopedic problems, clubfoot, and other things. All these things can be treated surgically, but they can't be cured. As you can imagine, it causes severe disability, and it's extremely expensive. The medical care in all countries is not completely available. Many of these children don't survive. So how big a problem is it? Well, about 260,000 pregnancies each year worldwide are affected. Many of these pregnancies will end in stillbirths or elective terminations, miscarriages, that sort of thing. The babies who do survive will have lifelong neurologic impairment and require multiple surgeries. Many of the children and families face social stigma in some places. And there's a huge financial burden of care. So it was figured out in the 1960s that the majority of spina bifida cases were associated with low levels of folate in the mother. And it turns out that there's a critical need for adequate levels of folate in the blood, and we're talking about tiny amounts. At this critical stage very early in pregnancy, often before women even realize they're pregnant. So most women are aware that they need to take prenatal vitamins once they're pregnant. But really the critical time is they have to start the prenatal vitamins or the folic acid before they get pregnant in order to have adequate blood levels at this critical time in the development of the embryo. So in the 1990s, it was proven that adding vitamin B9 or folic acid to certain foods like wheat could prevent most of the cases of spina bifida. And so Dr. Oakley, when he was at CDC, convinced the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to require the addition of folic acid to enriched wheat products. That method has spread to many countries around the world, and so you can see from this map that many countries have also adopted the addition of folic acid to their food supply. And you can also see, though, that there are many countries who do not yet add folic acid to their food supply. And this is really the overall goal that our club and the many other people who are working on this project have, is to spread food fortification around the world. Because if you can get the adequate amounts of folic acid in the food, women don't have to think about it, taking vitamin supplements ahead of time. They get it just from their food, and we can, it turns out, prevent most cases of spina bifida by just adding tiny amounts to the food supply. Typically wheat when it's milled, but it can also be added to rice, to corn flour, and to salt. So it can be adapted to the dietary preferences of different countries around the world. So there are two approaches that can be taken to prevent the neural tube birth defects. We can prevent the first affected child with fortification of food like grains and salt with folic acid. And then there is a group of folks who are at very high risk, and those are mothers who have had a baby already with spina bifida. They are 10 times as likely to have a second child. And so as a project, our Rotary Club provides high doses of folic acid supplements to women who have already had an affected pregnancy, to reduce their tenfold risk down to a very low level. So this approach was proven in a trial, in a clinical trial in China in the 1990s. That was back when the U.S. had better relations with China. The CDC sponsored a large trial there that showed that women who took 400 micrograms of folic acid, that's a microgram is about the size of a grain of salt. So it's a tiny, tiny amount. It's often packaged in a bigger pill with filler so that you can actually take it out of a bottle. But we found that in this trial, they could reduce the incidence of spina bifida by up to 85% with these supplements. So a group of folks, the Reach Another Foundation in Ethiopia, came to us with a proposal for a high-risk prevention project. The Reach Another Foundation has been training neurosurgeons and providing the surgery and the aftercare to children born with spina bifida who later developed hydrocephalus in Ethiopia. They've been there for about 15 years, and they recognize the need to provide care not just to the children, but to the whole families, and to try to prevent second affected pregnancies. And fortunately, they had a large database of women who had already had one of these pregnancies. So it facilitated greatly identifying these women. And our global grant project is to provide the high-dose folic acid tablets to the affected mothers. We realize this is not the main global strategy, but as Diana mentioned, Rotarians are people of action. And this was the size project that our small club, which has about 25 members, could afford to take on and use it as an entree to folks like you and other Rotarians around the world to spread the word. So in the first year, our project was envisioned to last for 5 years. It's now in the second year. We're planning the third year global grant application. In our first year, we were in 2 hospitals in Addis Ababa. There was so much demand from other healthcare facilities in Addis Ababa and in Ethiopia that we expanded our project to 2 more hospitals. So we're now in 4 hospitals in Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa has about 7 million people in it, so it's a big city. But our project is the only source for high-dose folic acid in all of Ethiopia. So what can Rotary do about this? And the idea of the magic of Rotary has really come home to me in the last couple of years working on this project. Rotarians around the world need to be aware that there is a simple, proven, and very cost-effective way of preventing spina bifida. We can draw attention to folks who are affected with spina bifida, and actually we're involved in a project now to help provide wheelchairs and other forms of assistance to folks with spina bifida as well. And we can work with other Rotarians around the world to show that Rotary cares. It's really been just amazing to me, the reception that we've received from Rotarians around the world who are interested in working in this type of area. This is low-hanging fruit. So just to put it in perspective, the 260,000 estimated cases of spina bifida around the world is sort of comparable to the number of cases of polio around the world when Rotary took that on as a project in the 1980s. So we think that this could be one of Rotary International's great next projects to prevent all of the folic acid preventable cases of spina bifida in the world. Folic acid will not, unfortunately, prevent every case of spina bifida. There are about 20–25% of cases that are not related to the deficiency of folic acid. There are some other causes I could get into. But the low-hanging fruit is to provide trace amounts of folic acid in food to prevent the majority of cases. So this is a picture of our crew in Ethiopia receiving the first shipment of folic acid. We purchased 800,000 doses of folic acid, 5 milligram tablets, directly from a pharmaceutical manufacturer in India, and had it shipped to Ethiopia. So behind our intrepid crew there are the boxes of high-dose folic acid that were shipped to a loading dock in Ethiopia. And we have now ordered another 1 million doses of folic acid tablets, which will soon be on their way. These are examples of mothers who are receiving the high-dose folic acid tablets. Our distribution began November of 2023. These are some of the groups of folks that we work with, and you'll see the logos of the Rotary Club of North Atlanta, the Rotary Club of Coppell, Texas, but also UNICEF, the World Food Program, Vitamin Angels. There are many organizations that we have partnered with in this work around the world. So at this point, we will have some questions, but while we do that, I'm going to try to show you a very brief video that features Dr. Godfrey Oakley, who we talked about, but also Judy Woodruff. For those of you who haven't lived in the U.S., Judy Woodruff is a very famous news broadcaster in this country, and so very well known in the public broadcasting system. So let me see if I can pull up that video. It's brief, but very meaningful, I think.
So I turned to journalism as the last resort.
So Ralph, we can't see it at this point. So
Oh, you can't see the video?
no, you may.
Let's see if I can.
You have 3 kids, 3 children. Yeah. And your first was born with spina bifida.
Can hear it from.
Can you
but
see
it's
it
for
now,
you.
Kim?
There we go. Okay.
What makes up your spinal cord, your brain, and goes all the way down to the base.
I think the sound though is coming through your mic. I think not.
From below the neck, it's called spinal.
Can you hear it now?
For the longest time, children born
Yeah.
with this didn't survive. But in the 1960s, they came up with something called a shunt, which allowed them to drain excess fluid in the brain so that these children were able to survive. Our son Jeffrey was born in 1981. By that time, enough doctors did the surgery and they closed it at birth, put in a shunt when he was 15 hours old. It was a nightmare. It was very scary.
And then it was kind of a minor case, but then when he was 16, he had surgery.
That's right. There was surgery that had been scheduled to replace the shunt, and something went terribly wrong, and Jeffrey was left with multiple disabilities as a result. So today he's in a wheelchair, can only walk with assistance, has compromised vision, one of his eyes is closed, his speech is impaired, his short-term memory is impaired, can't use the right side of his body.
Were you angry?
Sad and angry and everything you can imagine. You know, it's the worst thing a parent can ever experience. It changed our whole family. I thought about quitting my work, but we had met a doctor at Johns Hopkins. He said, look, there's only so much you're going to be able to do for the rest of his life. You're going to serve him much more if you can continue to do the work that you do and be available to him when you can. And I've been thankful for that advice.
A person could become dreadfully bitter when a mistake has been made, when it's not just bad luck. Was it hard to get back into a positive space?
It took time. It took time. I mean, I cried every single day, I think for 2 years. I would cry in my car on the way to work or on the way home. But eventually I took my spirit from Jeff himself, my son. He kept going. He wasn't bitter. He isn't bitter today. He knows exactly what happened to him. And the fact is, there's really no alternative. I mean, you keep going and you make a life for yourself and for your child, or you don't. And that's not an option. The latter is not an option for us. I mean, we were going to do everything we could to help make sure his life was as full as it could possibly be. You know, we are grateful for every day that he has.
We have a thing at Tommy Moore called +1, where we like to remind everybody that nobody gets anywhere by themselves and that we're all affecting each other in such important ways. And you picked Godfrey Oakley. Tell us about Dr. Oakley.
I did, because when Jeffrey was young and I was doing everything I could to understand how to raise a child with spina bifida, I went to national conferences put on by the Spina Bifida Association. Lo and behold, this man speaking was the head of the birth defects section at the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Godfrey Oakley. So I went up to him and I introduced myself and I just grilled him. I had a million questions for him. This is a man who has devoted himself to doing everything he could to understanding the causes of spina bifida, and who was a big part of understanding that what causes so much of it is a lack of nutrient, so-called folic acid deficiency. Women in America are now used to being told, think about folic acid. Are you taking your vitamins yet? Godfrey Oakley is largely responsible for making sure that the Food and Drug Administration mandated folic acid in our diet, and he's now working on that for the entire world. He's made personally, single-handedly, made an enormous difference.
We interviewed Dr. Oakley, and we wanted to share with you a few of the things he had to say about you.
I'm a pediatrician and a geneticist and epidemiologist. And my job has always been to prevent birth defects. Probably the highlight of my professional career was at 5 o'clock on June the 24th, 1991, when Sir Nicholas Law called me to tell me that the randomized controlled trial that he and his team had conducted to see if A vitamin would prevent spina bifida had been called off early because it was such a successful study. And I knew at that moment that if we could get every woman in the world to consume enough folic acid to have blood folate levels that were high enough, there would be no more children born with folic acid preventable spina bifida. I feel my job is to be a science-based advocate that can translate the science that I know so well so that people who want to do good for people can see what an enormous opportunity this is to prevent child death. You know, I'm not exactly sure when I first met Judy. I'd asked her if she would work with me and another pediatrician to make a teaching cassette. In those days, there were cassettes for pediatricians, and she agreed to do that. And so we started a program talking about what spina bifida is, what some of the new treatments are. And I said, well, now let's move to prevention. And I remember Judy saying just as clearly as today, gentlemen, you don't get it. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean we don't get it? We're experts in spina bifida. She said, you don't know what it's like to send your child to the first grade in diapers. Judy and Al have always spent a lot of their energy trying to support the organization and do other things that would increase the likelihood that all people would have the care that they are able to afford to give to their son. They are just a terrific couple that I've enjoyed getting to know and working with Judy. And I appreciate the opportunity that she and Kelly had given me to tell the story of how we can make this birth defect go away.
And there you have it. I mean, he has been at the center of it. And I remember that story because here are these two extraordinary scientists and they're focused on what can we do to make sure we don't have babies being born with this issue. And I said, yes, and we still need to think about the ones who are among us, who are going to school. And Jeffrey, one of the most common conditions of spina bifida is bladder and bowel incontinence. Jeffrey Hunt had to learn to catheterize himself when he was 5 years old. It wasn't always perfect, and so there were days when he still had to wear a diaper to school when he was in first grade. But when your child is embarrassed or humiliated, I mean, there's no words. And so I wanted them to think about that, and I wanted them to think about what these children face.
So one of the things that you said is that people with disabilities are often invisible. That a thing you've noticed with Jeffrey is that we can't even make eye contact.
I'm with Jeffrey, who's in a wheelchair, and people don't look at him. And I figure if they're doing it for Jeff when I'm with him, then I just think about the many, many others who have some kind of a disability, some kind of something that makes them different. And they're not treated like whole people. It's not right.
Tell me about your other kids.
Benjamin is our 35-year-old who is interested in American politics after years of telling us he had no interest in politics. And then our daughter is adopted from South Korea, and she is today a social worker.
Wow. How did you decide to adopt?
We decided we wanted an international family. We had several friends who had adopted, and lo and behold, there she was.
So at that point, I'm going to, in the interest of time, stop the video and open the floor up for questions for anyone who has been kindly watching for the last half hour or so. I really thank you all for your attention.
So Dr. Peeler, I got to go to another meeting, but I just wanted to say to you that thank you so much. It's just wonderful work that you do. And It's just so inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Thank you, Dr. Sigamoni. Dr. Martha?
Thank you very much, Dr. Piller. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. I want to share that I was a student in the School of Medicine in the 70s, and one of the first deliveries of babies that I made was an encephalic baby because of lack of folic acid. And that came straight to my heart when I was a medical student. So I am connected to this project. This is a big problem with a relatively simple intervention to be prevented. And I think that key education is basic. For example, a chicken liver has 578 micrograms in 100 grams of tissue, and peanuts 246. So they grow. Peanuts grow in a farm. You can raise chicken in a farm also. So I think that the intervention could be simple. So I see that in South America, there is no prevention at all, according to the map you showed. And I want to volunteer to help to educate people. I'm not an expert. I'm just a medical doctor, not an expert on Spina Bifida, but I can translate. I'm a professional medical editor and translator, so I can translate professionally this presentation, and I can present in those two countries in South America who speak Spanish, just with the goal of educating, And again, thank you very much for this excellent presentation.
Thank you so much. It's very kind of you to offer to spread the word.
Mary?
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. It's interesting because in Uganda, our club, the Rotary Club of Kampala Muyenga Breeze, we have been doing some work with the Cure International Hospital. They are in Mbale, and they're doing a lot of work for the region. You get patients coming in all the way from DRC Congo, South Sudan, even from Kenya to support, to get children be operated on, especially children with hydrocephalus and Spina Bifida. And what I've really noticed and I've appreciated is the idea of supporting those mothers by providing them with folic acid vitamins so that we do not get another child born with Spina Bifida. So thank you very much for the great work you're doing.
You're welcome, Mary. And I have been aware of the hospital you were referring to. And there is a Rotary Club there that we have made some preliminary approaches to. The high-dose folic acid that we buy from the manufacturer in India is very expensive. We can buy a box of 100 tablets of folic acid for about 49 cents.
Okay.
So it's very inexpensive. Our grant, we get a matching grant from our Rotary district and a matching grant again from Rotary International. So our little club is able with $12,000 to $15,000 by the time it gets matched at the district and international level. We can buy a lot of folic acid tablets to distribute. But we're always looking for partner clubs to match up because, as you know, the global grants require a host club and an international club. And so we're always on the lookout for how to pair
partners.
up groups.
Yes. So it would be interesting to see how we can collaborate in the future, and let's keep talking and see how we can work together.
Mary, if you send me your contact information, I'll put the two of you in touch with each other. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Rotarian Ken.
Okay. I send it to RotaryWDA@gmail.com. So,
Okay.
um,
All right.
Sutithi?
Yeah, so a very good evening, good afternoon, good morning, because in my country it's good evening. So very happy to be here. Actually, this is the first time I've joined this meeting, but it's a pleasure and honor. I'm from Rotary International District 3291, India, Kolkata. And just to little bit tell about myself that I have worked on women's rights issue, and especially with women who are disabled and disadvantaged, and for a very brief period of time. So that's why I got interested when this meeting came up, and Ken is my Facebook friend, so that's how also I came to know about the meeting. And coming to the presentation today, thank you so much for that comprehensive and a very interesting presentation. I came to know from you that India is also having this program in one of the hospitals where there is a program which is being run to address this condition. So my question to you is, first of all, a big thank you for that enlightening presentation. That was really, really interesting. And it's very nice to know that I'm coming to know about India's initiative from your country. So I would like to know that in India, we have at the government level, as I know, prenatal and postnatal care, awareness programs that happens with Anganwadi workers in different communities across India, which is a policy in the government level. So considering the condition which you just mentioned, which is very, very threatening, and it needs attention. So is there any collaboration that has happened at the government level? That is first my question. And the second one is, prevention is always better than cure. So how Rotary is thinking in terms of awareness generation, how to bring more awareness with information sharing, especially across clubs, because not many people are aware. This is the first time I came to know about it. So how they are thinking, Rotary International, Rotary is thinking to bring more awareness, not only amongst people who are working on disability issues, but also many Rotary clubs will be interested because they are working on different issues, especially my club, which is Rotary Club of New Ballygunge. We extensively worked on, we get wheelchairs for people who need help, especially from disadvantaged community. So how we can collaborate on that? So if we can just a little bit share on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Satithi. The government of India has various standards, but as you know, mostly they are enforced in the various state governments. They have a current standard for fortification of food, but part of the issue that we've been working on with folks there is the standard is set too low. In other words, the amount of folic acid that has been added to foods, some wheat flour, some salt, actually now too in India, is too low to be effective. And so we have folks who are actually working with the FFSAI, the Food Standards Agency in India that sets those policies, to try to get those standards revised, and also try to raise awareness because through Rotary we have lots of connections. So we were able to get a letter to the I think it was the Vice President of India last year, who was a Rotarian, about this issue. So we have been working to raise awareness amongst policymakers, particularly to raise the level of folic acid in the food to prevent these cases. In the US, it's important to remember that it has a big economic impact, because even though most cases are prevented, the cases that occur typically in the US healthcare system, it's $1 million a case because of multiple surgeries, rehabilitation, lost income, both for the patient and for the parents, often the caregivers. So it's extremely expensive. In India, where the healthcare system pays for the care of these children, it's also extremely expensive if they can get the care. But in many places in India, they can't even get the care. So these children will die. Rotary has lots of connections. And to me, it just seemed like low-hanging fruit for Rotary. It's an ideal Rotary project because of Rotary's reach around the world to bring this attention to policymakers, to actually get something accomplished. And we've been modestly successful so far, and we just keep working at the problem. But thank you for your interest.
Thank you, Dr. Ralph.
Thank you so much.
And Satiti, if you want to also send your connection and information to RotaryWDA@gmail.com, I'll connect you with Dr. Ralph. Joyce?
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Good morning, good evening. First of all, let me apologize. I really wanted to hear the background, but when I read, I want to appreciate, when I read what the topic is about, I got very interested. I'm Rotarian Joyce Wayaki, past president of our club. Is called Rotary Nairobi North in District 9212. And the reason why I got very interested is because I am dealing with the director of programs and projects, and one of the RCC's Rotary Community Corps that we have onboarded, they are dealing with children with bona fide and other disabilities. So when I saw that there's treatment, I was amazed because I didn't know that there's any intervention that can be made. So I think for me, it's more of to touch base and have contact, then probably we can discuss more on how can we create that awareness or preventive measures or rehabilitation, whichever can fit in the profile of what is being done. That's why I got in, but unfortunately I was late in joining in. So I've just come in at the tail end of the meeting. But thank you so much for even that effort to reach out and to create that awareness, that there is an opportunity to have interventions that can create impact to those who are going through, the parents and the children themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your club has just been amazing in its success in the last 4 years. And so when I saw the article in the Rotary magazine about your club, I thought that I should definitely reach out to you because you have such a worldwide reach and such a focus on action.
And you're talking about the Rotary Club World Disability Advocacy. So,
Yes.
and Rotarian Joyce is in Nairobi. So, I think you sent me or was sent to me that there is a project in Nairobi for folic acid, I think. If not, once again, Rotarian Joyce, if you would like to get in touch, and we'd like to keep in touch with you, send your contact information to RotaryWDA@gmail.com. So, I know Rotary. I'm sorry. Let me slow down. RotaryWDA, WDA World Disability Advocacy @gmail.com.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, we'll send some information, then we can pick it from there.
Thank you, Rotarian Joyce.
Good.
I know we're past the hour. Where's the voice coming from, John?
Yeah. I think for Joyce's help as well, this complete presentation will be going
Yes.
up onto the Facebook page, and so you can
Oh.
actually go back and see it from scratch, so you won't miss
Yes.
anything. See the whole thing.
Oh, thank you so much, because I was feeling I can pick the bits and pieces, but I needed to hear it all. Thank you, John.
Yeah, we'll get it up probably within a week on the YouTube, and I'll promote it on social media.
Okay.
I know we're past the hour, and I don't know, Ralph, how your schedule is, but I can officially kind of end this meeting and thank you. But if anybody else wants to kind of hang around to ask you a few more questions, that would be fine. I know I have a question, and you're talking about giving pills for the folic acid, but can you also do it in the diet? Is it can be just done by diet as opposed to pill?
The vast majority of cases around the world will be prevented by adding folic acid to the diet. So as was mentioned, there are some foods that are high in folic acid, but most women in the world of reproductive age don't realize they need to eat half a dozen chicken livers every day to get adequate folic acid. So it's so much easier to put it in enriched flour, in corn masa flour, in rice, in salt, where people don't even have to think about it. That's really the key, because half of pregnancies really across the world are unplanned. And even among the planned pregnancies, most women don't realize they need adequate folate before they get pregnant. They start thinking about prenatal vitamins once they're already pregnant. But for this birth defect, it's too late. You have to have adequate blood levels very, very early in pregnancy. And so they have to start early. So we want to get it in food. You can do it with supplements. Our little project does it with supplements, but that's because we have a high-risk population of women who have already had a baby with spina bifida. And so, of course, they're very aware of the issue. And so it's relatively easy to get them to take the folic acid if it's available to them. And so
Thank you.
what we've done is to make it available in Ethiopia where it wasn't before.
Okay, and John, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Ralph. Absolutely brilliant. The Spina bifida, has been virtually killed in Ireland, north and south. One of the things which was interesting was they found that Ireland was deficient because of its soil type in allowing folic acid to be produced. Therefore, by law, every loaf of bread, every flour product, whether gluten-free or vegan or whatever it is, by law is actually enriched. It was a very, I'd seen that PBS broadcast before. The young gentleman who lives opposite me, he is one of those people who gets up and goes. He's driving a car. He's qualified as an accountant. He's got a degree. He's got a shunt, which has to be sorted out every so often. And my wife usually gets a scream of help from across the road because she's actually trained pediatric nurse. So we go from there. But people, even with spina bifida, unless it's in the very, very severe categories, they actually can lead useful, productive, economic lives. And that doesn't matter whether it's in Kenya or in China or in Colombia, where they don't enrich the food. But they are doing well, and Darren is an absolute shining example of what people can do and how it can be done. And it's a privilege to know him.
Thank you, John. There is a very wide spectrum of disability following following the birth defect that we're talking about. So it's everything from prenatal and neonatal death all the way to folks who have very mild disabilities and can fully function. So I know patients who can walk and are absolutely fully functional. So it's a huge spectrum, but I think everyone would agree that it's just so much better to prevent this this birth defect from the beginning than it is to have these folks have to undergo the many surgeries that it takes and rehabilitation work that it takes.
I know, Dr. Ralph, that I had talked to a doctor in Uganda who was doing surgery on children with hydrocephalus. And he had told me that if a child born with hydrocephalus, if is operated on within the first 3 months, then it increases the chances greatly of that child ending having a normal life, which is another message we need to get out to make sure that mothers understand that they can get their child operated on before before it's too late.
Sure.
Any other questions for Dr. Ralph?
One thing about the surgery, Ken, though, is that when children are operated on as infants, the shunt often has to be revised as they grow.
Okay,
So they
makes
get
sense.
bigger and they have to have multiple operations over time
Yeah,
to
makes
replace
sense.
the shunt.
Yeah, makes sense.
And when they age, shunt needs to be replaced as well on occasions.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions for the doctor?
I'm happy to stay as long as anyone has any questions or comments, but
Ralph, do you
really
want to? I've been sharing the club email, but do you want to share an email that they can get in touch with you directly too?
yes, it's on the presentation.
Oh, okay.
Slides, but it's rdpiimd@comcast.net.
Okay, sounds good. And again, maybe as a summary, if there is somebody here or somebody who's watching the video afterwards who wants to get involved in this, how are they going to do that? What's the best way to do that?
Well, initially, I'd welcome their email and contact me, and I will try to put you in touch with folks that we may know here who are also working on the problem. We have a Zoom call every other Friday morning with neurosurgeons around the world who are dedicated primarily to prevention, but are also involved in treatment. So we have lots of contacts around the world, Rotarians and non-Rotarians. Then I'd be delighted to put you in touch with folks who are working on the problem. And we fortunately have not. I don't claim to be, but we have some of the world's experts in the group that we're working with, like Dr. Oakley and others who are very effective at providing technical assistance to get projects going.
Oh, anybody can go to that meeting?
Yes, it's sort of like your meeting. They request invitations, of course. So if anyone would be interested, send me an email and I will forward it to the folks that send out the invitations for that meeting.
Okay, sounds good. If there are any other questions for Dr. Ralph?
And if we can receive any ones regarding this subject, we will pass them on to Dr. Ralph.
Yes.
Wonderful, thank
you. It's such a simple solution to a big problem. So,
yes.
So we got to get that word out as much as we can. Okay, very good. Thank you all. Much appreciate you being here. Much appreciate you being here, Dr. Ralph. And I look forward to working with you more on the future. But